being an entrepreneur sounds cool, but the reality of building a business is very, very difficult. Every level that you hit, there's a lot of things that suck that you just won't want to do. What you're capable of is on the other side. I don't feel like it.
And if you're committed to what it is that you're trying to do, nothing is going to stop you from getting there.
Welcome back to another episode of Real Business Owners with myself, Trevor Cowley. Hope you guys are having an amazing week. Hope you had an awesome week last week with loved ones for Thanksgiving. Hopefully you were able to rest, relax, and commit one of the 7 deadly sins, which is gluttony. Stuff yourself to the gills, take a nap, and do it over and over and over again until you just can't stand it. So I know we're all guilty of that, but it's time to get focused, and it's time to tap into this week's episode and make sure that you're doing everything that you possibly can to put yourself in the highest probability of success when operating a business. This week, I wanted to discuss, employees, employment. I mean, that's a big part of, success or failure is those that you surround yourself with, right? A coach could be the best coach in the entire world, but if he's surrounded by all the wrong players, it's not going to go very far. Everything has to be in sync, meaning the mission, your core values, and the people that you hire, the people that you bring into your organization, that there's alignment with those things. And I wanted to talk about a few things that will be a detriment to an employee's success. I think sometimes it's the individual and sometimes it's the business owner. The business owner doesn't do a good job of setting that person up for success, bringing them into your organization. And I'm going to go over kind of some of the deadly sins that business owners commit when it comes to, hiring people and how they manage those people once they're brought into the organization. And the reason why I wanted to bring up this topic and have a podcast episode about it is I've had a few phone calls with various different people. Some people in my mastermind, some people that just follow on social media, whether it's through DMs. And a lot of the conversations lately have been, I wouldn't say complaints, I would say issues, looking for feedback on how to manage people inside their organization that really aren't performing at a high level. And as I alluded to these individuals that I had these conversations with, you'll always get what you tolerate. It's like we hope for people to turn it around, but if they don't, they don't. And you're holding on to hope rather than utilizing data or information to make a solid business decision. And so one of the main things that holds business owners back from, putting themselves in a position where they can be successful and the business has the ability to operate without them is I'm the only one that can do it right mentality. That's like one of the biggest deadly sins when it comes to hiring and retaining people. The owner just simply doesn't trust anyone. They don't hand over the keys to any tasks and constantly is redoing other people's work or refuses to hand off real responsibility to other people. Why it's damaging, employees never get their own outcomes. So they don't ever grow their own skills or their own confidence. One of the things that I ask people in an interview is like, okay, well, if you run across a problem or if you're having an issue with this, like, how would you go about solving it? And what I want to do is I want to see if they're solve first type mentality, meaning are they an individual that's going to take a problem and fill that gap with their own time, knowledge, experience, or are they going to immediately bog down another team member? And I don't have a problem people working together as a team. I just have a problem with people not doing their part to come up with a solution prior to engaging with other people on the team. The owner eventually becomes the bottleneck for every decision. The business can't scale past that owner's bandwidth. This is an issue that I see very often in that first maybe $250,000 to $1 million a year mark in revenue is you're still small enough to be able to have everything that's going on in your organization be looked over by you. And so therefore you look it over and, you don't like something, you take the project back and say, I'll just do it. I had a guy that I was talking with a few months back and he was frustrated. And I could tell based upon the conversation that we had that he's an overbearing guy and an individual that really probably doesn't hand over the reins easily. And I could tell based upon that conversation, the type of work environment that he's creating for his employees. And he's complaining about people not stepping up. And I told him, I said, do you think maybe people don't step up because they don't want to step on your toes? Do you feel as though that there's a, anxiety about overstepping their boundaries in terms of the way that you handle yourself and the manner in which you show up and operate on a day-to-day basis, that might deter them from wanting to try to step up or create a solution or expand themselves? Because if they expand themselves, they're starting to get into your territory, into your bubble. And he says, I would bet that it's a lot of that. His issue was he had so much work backed up. He didn't want to spend the time training and giving people the ability to rise up because it would slow him down. So in other words, these jobs that are getting backed up will continue just to get backed up, and they won't be able to get to the next one very quick because he's on one job going through, training with some of these people. And I said, well, pick your poison. Either you can slow down for a period of time so that you have the ability to speed up, or you could just stop complaining about where you're currently at and be appreciative of the situation of your business, of the employees that are there helping you get the current outcome that you're experiencing. So you either need to start having more gratitude for what you currently have, or stop tolerating what you currently have and slow down in order to speed up. Number 2 is no documented system. The owner trains through osmosis, just watch me type situation, but never document how things actually get done. Every new hire ends up starting from scratch. No one can replicate results or improve upon them because there is no proven process or system. The owner ended up becoming the only reliable system, forced to jump back anytime something breaks. That's a huge, huge issue. And initially, when you start a business, you don't really have to do deep documentation of systems or processes because it's just you and you know everything and it's just all in your head. So you just continue to deal with whatever problem, however you see is the best possible solution for the outcome that you desire. And so it's just like kind of a case-by-case basis, and you're just constantly reacting to things because there is no system, there is no processes put in place. And then what ends up happening is somebody else doesn't know what to do in certain situations, so they have to bring it to your attention, and then there you are just, again, reacting to another situation rather than putting people in place with documented systems so that they have these guardrails in place that they know that they're moving in the right direction. And if anything happens outside of those guardrails, obviously you'll come into play. But number 3 is micromanaging every detail. Again, these are surefire ways to put employees in a position to fail, right? Nobody can do anything as good as the owner. There's no documented systems. They're micromanaging every detail. The owner ends up hovering over, checking every message, rewrites every single email, or give constant small corrections. Why it's damaging? It's going to kill initiative, make employees fearful of making mistakes. And this goes back to the story that I just alluded to. The result is the team stops thinking and they just wait for the boss's approval. So in other words, there's more things landing on your desk. Poor onboarding and training structure. So you bring on a new employee, new employees are thrown into the chaos with no clear training path. There's a shadowing plan, but there's no success metrics. They never gain full context of what's going on and how it should be done. So they make preventable errors or operate below their potential. This no onboarding, the training structure, I would say the onboarding process, the interview process, everything that you're doing prior to onboarding an employee is some of the most important things that an individual should focus on in operating a business and setting a standard from day one. That this is how we do things. This is how we operate. If somebody deviates, we don't tolerate it here. How I posture it or present it is, showing up as the best version of yourself, especially when you're doing business with other people and other business owners, it's the right thing to do, showing up at the highest possible level that you have the ability to show up. So there should be a proper exchange of value. Somebody gives you money, they should receive that money's exchange in value from you and your business. The best way to make sure that happens is setting that standard from day one in terms of how you operate as a business and the expectations that come with working inside of your organization. So one, showing up is the right thing to do for the customer. Number two, showing up to your fullest potential is the right thing to do for you because it's an investment into yourself. It'll only create more opportunities for you in the future. Number three, it is a deposit in your self-worth. Anytime that you're doing something and you're doing it to the best of your abilities, your mind knows that, and it's a deposit in your self-worth. So it actually feels good operating at your peak. There's a proper exchange of value, and you're creating opportunities for yourself inside of the organization as time goes on when you show up that way. And if you don't show up that way, it's just simply not tolerated because I have to have a proper exchange of value and do a good job. How you show up affects everybody in the organization, all the other players on the team. And what I mean by that is if you fall short and you don't do something that you should do and we lose a customer or whatever it may be, that's lost revenue. In other words, that's hurting other team members or people in the organization from opportunities for them to expand and get raises and move the needle for themselves financially. Now, if you do an incredible job, that customer might tell somebody else about your business. And again, that affects the team in a positive way, not just the individual themselves. So I lay all this stuff out when I'm going through the interview process, and I just hammer on standards, expectation, and what we will or will not tolerate as an organization. And so I think it's very, very important. Attitude is a huge thing when it comes to, me and operating businesses and being in an environment that I have to be in on a day-to-day basis. I want people to have a proper attitude about what they're doing. A bad attitude doesn't fix a problem. It doesn't create a solution, and it only brings other people down with that individual. And so it's a cancer, and I'm a big, big believer in talking about the attitude that people should have inside of that organization at the same time. The reason why I again, bring this up, I'm going to default back to a conversation that I had last week where I had a couple gals reach out about a few different employees. One of the employees is not really showing up on time, kind of attitude issues, and the other one shows up on time but just has attitude issues. And I just said, you're going to get what you tolerate. As long as you're tolerating it, they'll continue to do it. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to have a sit down with them and realign the expectation or the standards that you have in your organization. This falls on your shoulders as the leader in this business. If you didn't set that standard from day one, you have to try to course correct. But anytime that you make changes in your organization, if somebody's been able to get away with murder, so to speak, and you've tolerated that, anytime that you try to course correct, usually what you're going to end up doing is pushing that individual outside of your organization. They're not going to want to adapt or change with the environment as the environment changes. That's why it's so important to set that standard right off the bat, because the likelihood of them honoring that standard and becoming a great individual inside of your organization increases tenfold. There's personality assessment tests. There's a whole bunch of different stuff. Ready, Aim, Climb. A good friend of mine, Brian, he does a great job with these assessments and figuring out where an individual would be a good fit inside of an organization. And that's what he does, is making sure that you have the highest probability of success in terms of retaining people once you hire them. Number 5 is undefined roles or expectation. The owner assumes every employee should know what to do. If you're a plumber and you just hire another plumber, they should just know what to do. If you're an HVAC, they've done HVAC, they should just know what to do. If they're an accountant and you hire them at your accounting, they should just know what to do. That's not the case. You should have higher standards than what the marketplace has in terms of how you operate your business and what you tolerate with inside of your organization. People can't win without a scoreboard. So this ends up being a damaging thing to your business without a defined role or defined expectations of what you expect from that individual when they accept employment. And part of my offer letter, when I do send an offer letter to an individual that I want to engage as an employee, part of that is they do have to sign an agreement that they will honor our core values. And so I have them do that for a reason. That's like it follows up with the standards and the expectation that I created in the interview. and the core values that we went over. And then they have to sign an agreement stating that they're going to honor these core values. And if I ever have an issue with them, then I can write them up based upon the core values and the agreement that they signed coming into my company. Information hoarding. The owner keeps critical information, client details, password, strategy, all in their own head. I mean, some of these kind of, the lines are blurring a little bit. Some of these are basically rehashing some of the other ones, but it's important to be thorough here. Why it's damaging: team can't make decisions without owner's input. Owner becomes the company's single point of failure when you hoard information. It should be abundant to those that need it. And, the other information that people inside your organization have, whether it's systems and processes out in the field or systems and processes inside of the office, all of those should be very well detailed with all the information to be able to back that individual up so that they can execute at their job at an extremely high level. Number 7 is no feedback or coaching cadence. What happens? The owner ends up correcting everybody in the moment, but never really intentionally develops people. It's damaging because employees don't know how to improve, and they feel like that they're only messing up. So every single time it's like, hey, this is the issue, this is the issue, this is the issue, right? So what happens is there ends up being a skill gap, and turnover ends up increasing because nobody's developing their skills, because it's just like, hey, don't do that, don't do that. You're always just correcting, but not necessarily saying, hey, these are the guidelines. This is exactly how we're supposed to do it, and coaching them through the process. It's okay for them to make mistakes, but it's not okay to have bad attitude. That's something that you have the ability to control. It's not okay to have systems and processes and have them not honor those systems and processes. It's not okay to have standards and have them not operate at those standards. It's okay if they mess up in terms of honoring the standards that you have, and they made a decision based upon free will that they thought this was what's best in that moment, based upon the core values and based upon the mission statement, based upon the standards that you have. Did they do what they thought was the right thing in that situation? And even if it's an error that still happened, then that's where the coaching cadence kind of comes in. Number 8's too busy to train. So this goes back earlier to the podcast where I talked about the individual basically saying he's so backed up that he doesn't really want to slow down and spend time properly to build out teams and to find those lead individuals within inside of his organization so that he has the ability to focus on continuing the line of work and maybe expanding into multiple teams. He just had one team that followed him from job to job. He was doing tree trimming type stuff, but he was expecting everybody to be him, right? So, well, nobody ever really trained me. I learned all that. So again, hiring people just expecting what he expects of himself, and he's putting that on the employees, and they're never going to have an opportunity to win when you expect that out of them. There's no relayed information, there's no coaching, there's no systems, there's no processes, there's no slowing down in order to train properly. So therefore, he's created his own hell, his own version of hell, because he says, and this isn't what I want to do, but his actions are completely opposite of what he says. And so, he tried it for a couple of days and texts me back and says, man, I just can't. He just didn't have the patience for it. And so he's going to be trimming trees for a long time with one crew, probably till retirement. But eventually the pain becomes so great that you can't tolerate it anymore. And you're like, fuck it. If the business goes under because I put these people in lead positions, then it is what it is. It's almost like you finally find a moment where you throw your hands up and like, I don't even care what the result is. I just want to change. I want something different. I just can't keep doing this anymore. And then finally they put themselves in a position at that point to step back and have somebody fill in that gap. But the owner claims that there's no time to slow down and train properly. It's damaging because they stay busy doing instead of, building capacity within inside of their organization. The result is the owner's calendar becomes a treadmill, lots of motion, but no progress. So what they're doing is just kind of at this maintenance level, maintaining what they have, but they're not gaining ground and they're really not losing ground. And so you have to make the decision, is the result that I'm currently experiencing, am I okay continuing to make that same exchange for this same result? And if you feel as though that, hey, I can't do this forever, then you need to start making adjustments right now, because those adjustments will take time. It could take 3 years. It could take 5 years. It could take 10 years to fully exit yourself out of a business. But it is a long, hard road, but you need to determine whether you would rather deal with that pain and go down that road and go through the bumps and bruises in the process of, replacing yourself, or whether or not you would just rather deal with the bumps and bruises of continuing to do what you've always done. Number 9 is underinvesting in training tools or resources. What happens? The owner doesn't spend any money on structured training, software, or education. Why? It's damaging. Team members can't level up their skills, and if they're not leveling up their skills, then again, you're creating a bottleneck, and your current result will probably remain the forever result. The result of undertraining and not giving proper resources, the owner fills gaps personally instead of empowering other people to create those solutions. Number 10 is being emotionally attached to being needed. So deep down, the owner ends up enjoying secretly being the go-to person. It reinforces their identity of being important. And so it's the double-edged sword where we complain about being so busy and always being needed, but we never do anything about it. Why it's damaging is they unconsciously prevent independence to keep control. And that's a situation that most people will eventually exit. The result is the business revolves around the owner instead of scaling beyond them. I can't tell you how important it is just to start somewhere, just to start with the basics, having core values, having a mission statement, having proper expectations set from the get-go. If you're sitting down with somebody in an interview process and you're going to hire them for a front desk, and you talk about the standards and what you won't tolerate and how important it is to, have a good attitude, that it's hard out in the world and people might be having a bad day. And if we have the opportunity when they reach out to us to be a shining light in the world and be something positive, and infect that individual in a manner in which means that they want to do business with us. And so just how you answer the phone, just how you interact with people, that has the ability to make somebody's day or enhance somebody's day at a bare minimum. And so my guess is if you had to sit down with somebody after a proper interview process, laying down what your standards are and your core values are and how important attitude is, if somebody starts having an attitude problem and you sit down with them and say, hey, look, this is what we talked about, before I brought you on. And so it's like it's setting the expectation. If there's no expectation set, then they run wild. That's just how it works in the world, right? Like human beings will just do whatever based upon how they feel in the moment. Employees have feelings just like any other human being. Sometimes they'll feel like it, sometimes they won't. But if there's a standard and an expectation that's created prior to that, then at that point they have no choice but to operate at or as close to that standard as possible on their good days or bad days. It doesn't matter. The business owner has plenty of good days, plenty of bad days. We still got to operate and do what we got to do. The idea is to create an environment where, one, everybody supports everybody, that the team builds each other up, which is super, super important. If you have a negative person inside of your organization, like they're probably just a negative person. And the hardest thing in the entire world to do as a human being is change who you currently are. You have to create friction with the current version of yourself in order for a new version of yourself to be born. And most people just won't want to go through that friction. And so that's why it's so important that you don't start trying to change standards or expectations or have values, when you've got 20 employees, because you do it like that, you might lose 10 of them because they're like, dude, they're getting crazy around here. I'm write up forms and saying all this stuff. Yeah. But if that's what it was from day one, they wouldn't have any problem with it. They wouldn't know any different. And so usually when you're making changes, there's going to be a lot of friction and a lot of pain, right? So like doing the right thing is always the harder route to go down. Like doing the wrong thing is continuing to show up the way that you have, continuing to manage or lead the way that you have, continuing to interview the way you have, continuing to have low standards in which is creating issues or problems for you. And hiring the wrong person, I mean, that creates a lot of problems. There's an opportunity cost. There's a hidden tax, so to speak, or a hidden cost when it comes to, a bad hire, in terms of whether it's culture, in terms of whether it's bad service that you have to go back and fix, whether it's a customer that no longer wants to do business with you, whether it's other people on the team always having to pick up the slack. If they're taking 10% of their time at 40 hours a week, that's 4 hours per week that you're paying somebody else. That could be $100 a week going out the window, $5,000 a year, just to try to make up for an individual that's not operating at the level that they should be operating at. So having extremely high standards inside of your organization is very, very difficult. I will say that right off the bat, because it's a friction point for those that have been there for a long enough period of time when change happens. And when you make that change, you have to stay committed to that change, because it will get dicey. But then as you hire new people with these new systems or new processes, new interview style, new standards, making sure that your core values are at the top of the discussion when it comes to how you operate your business, I think that you're going to set a whole new expectation for when they come into your organization. And then you just have to make sure you're not doing all these other things in terms of, micromanaging, or, not documenting processes, micromanaging every detail, how you handle the onboarding, hoarding information, making sure that you're giving feedback, coaching cadence, not saying I'm too busy to train, underinvesting, and being overly emotionally attached to being needed. Those are what run people outside of your organization. How you retain people and keep people is have a positive, uplifting environment with high standards. People like standards. People like to work somewhere where they know what's expected of them, because they know what a win looks like. They have somewhat of a scorecard, and there's things that they could be rewarded based upon their performance. And they know that other people are being held accountable to a high level of performance as well. I mean, again, you would rather play on a winning team that has high standards than play on a losing team that there's not a whole lot of opportunities there. There's not a whole lot of standards. You see this on sports teams when a player starts bitching in the media. There's fracture in the locker room, and it's very difficult for people to win at an extremely high level with a fractured organization. And most often it's coming from the leader. It's coming from the owner. It's coming from the individual that should be not tolerating the outcome that they're currently experiencing, but it's just physically exhausting, emotionally exhausting, and draining when you've got a million other things to do. But now you have to continue to reinforce a standard over and over. It's almost like kindergartners. You got to say the same thing over and over and over and over before it truly, truly soaks in. And I'm not calling adults or employees, kindergartners by any means. It's just reinforcing the values that are important to you, and what you will or won't tolerate is really the idea there. And so, guys, if you're ready to level up, go to joinrbo.com. I'd love to hop on a call with you, understand your situation, see what we can do to assist. If you're in the blue collar space and you're looking to systemize or have somewhat of a back end, kind of an admin team, I would go to the link in my bio on Instagram. It's for Jobber. It gives you a couple week free trial and 20% off of the first, I think, 3 or 4 months, something like that. I do have an affiliate link there, and I get paid anytime somebody utilizes that, just in full transparency. But I did do a demo and was absolutely blown away by the systems and processes that they have, and how it helps streamline your business. And so if you're in the services and you don't have a proper back end, you're tracking down invoices, don't know what jobs are scheduled, don't know how much you have in your pipeline, always tracking down invoices, then go to the link in my bio, click on it, and at least do a demo of it, see if it's right for you. Other than that, guys, keep kicking ass, and we'll see you next week.